Hey friends, hello, happy Friday. Holy smokes, it's Friday. I'm so excited to be here. I hope everyone's been having a great week. I've got a really fun tutorial I'm going to share with you today. We have some friends that have joined us. Hi Ruth, hi Judith, hi Cherie, hi Irma, hi Liz. So excited. I think that's Kiki. I'm not sure. Um, I'm so excited to be here. I'm Lisa Hetrick. This is my YouTube channel and blog, and I'm just excited to be here and have some fun with you today. I've got a really fun card tutorial, card mashup with two of my stamp sets with Gina K Designs and a little story about some violas. If you've been following me in social media, and I'm not sure if I sent this out in my email, I don't think I did. If you've been following me in social media, I shared a little bit about my viola meadow out front. So that was the inspiration for today's card, but just a really quick story. So several years ago when my father passed away, he passed away in the summer, and that following spring, out in my front yard, there was a little tiny viola patch. Little tiny viola patch. Like 10 violas in a little tiny patch in a lower corner of the front yard. And I was just kind of thinking, it was spring was happening, and I was just thinking about my dad and really missing him. And so I was just kind of talking to him and having a little conversation with him in the little viola patch. And I just love violas. They're the happiest little flower. I'm going to show you some more. I picked some from my meadow this morning. They're the happiest little flower. And at that time, it became the inspiration for the stamp set, Wildflowers and Weeds with Gina K Designs. So it became that inspiration for the illustrations for that stamp set. And I was just, having a moment of grace with my dad in the little patch. Now, here's where it gets juicy and fun. Every year since, it's grown exponentially. And I get it. I know how things grow. But every year, it's grown bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And now, this year, it is covering my entire front yard. Entire front yard. It is like a beautiful sea of violas. And it just makes me so happy. And the other day, when it was like at peak, I was out there just kind of sitting in what I call the meadow of violas and talking to my dad. And every year since, that's what I've done. And I have found such great joy and peace in this little activity that I do every fall, every spring. Sorry. So I just wanted to share that little story with you. It's sort of, and today it kind of inspired our card mashup today. That's all about choosing grace and my stamp set Choose Grace. And I just love the wildflowers and weeds. The pansies are starting to show. The wildflowers are starting to kind of come up out of the ground. It's just such a beautiful time. So super excited to share that story with you today. Now, we are going to dive right in. I'm going to show you the inspiration for the car project today. And also, just like my other lives, about the middle of the live, we're going to dive into a watercolor lesson. Over the last couple tutorials, I've covered several different watercolor lessons with different kinds of mediums. So pan watercolors, we've talked about pencils, we've talked about different kind of watercolor things that we can do for our stamping and paper crafting projects. But now, today, I'm going to talk about water-based markers, specifically Caran brush markers and Zig brush markers. And I've spent a lot of time with you on our lives talking about hot press paper and 100% cotton hot press paper and 100% cotton cold press paper. Now today we're going to talk about a more budget-friendly watercolor paper that I do enjoy using for my paper crafting projects, but is perfect to use for our light watercolor washes that we're going to do today. So super excited. I see everybody popping in. Irma just said take a picture and post it. I do have a picture of my viola field posted on my Instagram channel. So I'll put that down in the description. Now, I am going to go down to our down camera and go through the supplies relatively quickly, okay, so that we can dive right in to our watercolor lesson and get stamping. All of the supplies are listed down below, and of course, if you're watching this on the replay, you can feel free to ask any questions in the comments, and I'm going to answer them, of course. And ladies who are on our live right now, if you have questions along the way, I can see them and I will try to answer them along the way. So let's go ahead and get started by going to our down camera, and I'm going to do a quick look through the supplies and we're going to get started. All right, let's go. Okay, so here is the well, first of all, we must start with the violas, right? We must start with the violas. Here are the beautiful little violas that I picked. Let's get them in the camera here. Let's see if we can get this to focus a little bit better. There we go. Here are the beautiful little violas that I picked right before the live. This one is my super fave. Make it that so that you can see what's happening there. I'm sorry about that. I'm not really sure why that's kind of blurry. Usually I can pull things up and it gets a little bit better, but it's not today. So, you know, it is what it is. But here are these beautiful little flowers. They're just so happy. They've got happy faces, and I just love them. So they are part of the inspiration for today. Now, here are the two cards that were inspiring today's stamp project. So I've got this card, which I'm totally digging, the wildflower, the pansy here with that little heart that we're putting inside, and a mashup between this stamp set and this stamp set to create a whole new look. So here is the card that we are going to do today. Digging it. I'm loving it. Love just all the colors. Very super springy. And we're going to use that Choose Grace stamp as our stamp sentiment. So let's go ahead and dive in real quick. Here are the two stamp sets that I'm going to be using. I've got Choose Grace. I've got all my stamps out here and I'll walk through them, but I'm using some of the elements from Choose Grace. I've got this, some of the leafery. We're going to use the Choose Grace sentiment, and of course we're going to use the cup. Oops, you know what? I see something that on the screen here. There was a little bloop on the screen. We're going to get rid of that. Okay, that was there for a while. Sorry about that. Gotta love the tech. Okay, and here is Wildflowers and Weeds. We're going to be using the pansy, and I'm going to use the viola. In this stamp set, in Wildflowers and Weeds, I love this stamp set. And again, this was the stamp set that I illustrated right after that, right after my father had passed away, when the first little viola patch popped up in the front yard. Now I have this beautiful meadow. I just love it. Okay, so here's the viola, and here is the pansy. Hi, Kathleen. Hi, Irma. Catherine popped in. We've got more folks popping in. That's so cool. I'm also going to be using the coordinating dies. Okay, so let's just go ahead and move those over. Now I've got all the stamps out here. Here are the colors that I'm going to be using. I've got Jelly Bean Green and Obsidian, and I am using this Wild Wisteria, and I've got three colors that are new to the Gina K line, and I know that they're in the kit and it's sold out right now, but I'm just sharing because I wanted to play with them today, and they will be available. So they are listed down below, but again, you could use any green colors that you wanted to use if you want to replicate this card. Okay, I've got, what else do I have here? I have these three little bitty hearts that we're going to use for the centers of our flowers. I've got some Zig markers here. Hi, Peggy from Pittsburgh. Zig Clean Color Real Brush Markers. I've got 2 colors in purple, and I'm also using this Karen brush marker. These are all water-based markers. You could use Tombows. You could use any marker in your stash that's water-based for this watercolor technique. These markers are perfect for the kind of paper that we're going to be using, which is, let's get into it. Okay, here is the cardstock that I'm going to be using. This is Jelly Bean Green, cut to an A2 size card. I have a piece of watercolor paper, and I already pre-stamped my cup because we do want to keep moving along, and I want to focus on that technique that we're going to do. Here is the paper that I'm using. It is Canson watercolor paper. This is a cold press paper. It is what's called a cellulose paper. So that means that there's a texture. It isn't 100% cotton. It's made from wood pulp. So that means that they've mashed the wood pulp together to create this paper. So it has a texture on one side and it's kind of smooth on the other. I like using this paper for some kinds of paper crafting projects, and I'm going to dive into that when I kind of show you a little bit about it. But the really cool thing about this paper is that it's pretty easily accessible. So if you have trouble finding the 100% cotton paper, this is a great one if you're going to be using some of your water-based markers. I just don't like using this paper too much when I'm doing super washy kinds of techniques for watercolor because it's not thirsty enough. It's just totally not thirsty enough. So Peggy just asked this question. Have you thought about turning the cup upside down and making it into a terrarium? It absolutely can be turned upside down and made into a terrarium. But I also have, I'm going to grab that set. I also have, let's see, I just popped it off the screen for a minute. I also have another stamp set in my line called Always Delightful. And that's what I had created, that cloche or terrarium-like effect. But look, you could totally do it with the cup too. How fun is that? Peggy, you've given me a great idea for maybe the next tutorial. So, okay, I digressed a little bit. So I've got this, I've got our watercolor paper here. And we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to stamp out all of the card elements first, and then I'm going to die cut them. And then we're going to dive into the watercolor lesson. Okay, so I'm going to grab, yes, Peggy, it was a great idea. Now everybody's got all these great ideas. I love it when we can all be together and share ideas for our stamp sets. It just brings me so much joy because there's so many different things that you can do with your stamps and your stash, and everybody comes to it with a different eye, and it's just so fun. I just love it. It's going to make my whole day. Okay, we're going to get started. I'm going to go ahead and stamp out the pansy and the viola in Obsidian. So let's just go ahead. Let's see if I can keep things a little bit tidy here. It's doubtful. Now, I'm stamping right on to my the watercolor paper. Now, you could use a Misty if you want, but I have found this particular watercolor paper, it is not super thirsty, so it doesn't have, like, it's not fibrous. So the Obsidian ink kind of floats on the top, and I am able to get a really good impression. So I could leave the pansy alone, but also in the stamp set, I have the center portion of the pansy. I'm going to ink that up with Obsidian and pop that right in here, and so that we can finish off that pansy and do a little two-step stamping there. Okay, I'm going to clean up my stamp, And now I'm going to move on to the viola. I'm going to stamp the viola twice. So a little fun fact about the violas. I got to bring one in. I just got to bring it in to just kind of show you how fun that is. Violas have 3 petals that point down and 2 petals that point up, where pansies do have the 3 down and 2 up, but their shapes are different. So they're big, like pansies are big honking smiley faces, right? And violas are like their little baby. Kind of fun, super fun. I have a class in my online school at craftyourjoy.com where, again, I was inspired by the violas in the meadow patch. And I have a class called Blobs to Blooms, painting violas in watercolor. It's a whole class just on painting violas. Super fun. It was also just part of the inspiration of the stamp set too. I love that Wildflowers and Weeds stamp set. There's so many different combinations that you can do in it. I'm going to stamp this out twice. We are going to color up 2 of them, but I want to leave enough room for the die cutting. So I've got all of the flower elements stamped out. Now I'm going to move to the leafery. We cannot have a card without the leafery. So I'm using the 2 really super whimsical leafery elements from the Choose Grace set. Judith just asked what ink am I using. So the ink that I'm using, that I used for the pansies, was Obsidian. And I'm using an Amalgam because I am going to be doing some watercoloring, and I don't want that black to bleed. Okay, so back to the leafery. I'm going to start, we're going to be using these 3, this light spruce, medium spruce, dark spruce. I'm going to start with the dark spruce. The reason why I'm using these colors are going to be available, they're available now in the kit, but I know that the kit sold out, but they are going to be available in a few months, like loose and separate. And the reason why I'm using these colors today is I wanted to experiment, and they also have a little bit of a they're a little bit blue. They have a little bit of a blue, a cool undertone to their color, which is really a nice companion to the lavender and the violet colors that I'm going to be using in the flowers. You're welcome, Judith. Okay, I've got this other stamp leafery element, and I am going to use the medium spruce and just go ahead and ink that up. Just take my cube to my stamp, inky inky, and just stamp that right alongside here. Hi, Cheryl. No worries. No worries. No one's late. We're just having some fun and getting going. Okay, now I have some other leafery elements. I've got this leaf that's sort of a closed leaf, doesn't have dots in it, and I also have this open leaf. Now, in my card projects, I like to use a combination of open stamps and silhouettes because it gives a nice contrast to the overall bouquet that I'm creating. So, love it. Okay, so I am going to go back to a dark spruce for this leafery element. A little dark spruce. I have to close. Ooh, I just saw that. I have to close my inks after I'm done using them. Because I will either put my hand in it or I will knock it over and it'll end up all over something else. So, yes, Ruth, I am good question. Thank you. I am stamping on the rough side of the cardstock. Now, it doesn't mean you couldn't stamp on the smooth side if you wanted. It's just that I wanted that texture. That little bit of texture adds a little something extra to our final card project. So that's why I am stamping on this side. If you stamped on the smoother side, your watercolor effects are going to be a little smoother. And I'm going to show you that when we get to the lesson. Okay, I've got one more piece of leafery. And this one I'm going to do in light spruce. Light spruce. Yeah, I think I'm going to do it light spruce. Yeah, let's do light spruce. Okay. And then just go ahead and stamp out that piece of leafery. So I have all of my leafery elements, and I'm going to go ahead and die cut them. Oh, thank you, Wendy. That was very kind of you. She said, we'll stay as long as possible, but we'll watch on the replay. Absolutely. Ladies, this is on the replay, and I've also been cutting some of the lives down to just the technique portion, and they'll be reissued in YouTube if you ever just want to watch the technique and not watch all the chatty chat, right? So that's cool. All right, so I'm going to take all these and use the companion dies and die cut these elements out. And yes, I have already die cut them so that we could keep things moving along. So let's take a look at our die cuts. So I'm going to move out the stamps that we're not going to be using. They're going to need a bath. My stamps are really, really, totally need a bath. Okay, so here are all of my stamped out elements. And we're going to focus on watercoloring these pieces. I'm going to move these over. I'm going to move these here. I'm going to bring in, and we're going to get right to the watercolor lesson. And then we're going to come back and start to watercolor this. Okay. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about brush markers. I've got some water here, and I also have a brush, a watercolor brush. Okay, so what is this? This is number 6. It doesn't matter. I like to use round watercolor brushes. And if you've watched things on my channel, you know I've talked about rounds because they come to a nice tip. And I like that. It's very nice. Okay. Let me move my pansy and my viola over here. They're going to be our little card elements. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about cellulose watercolor paper. Canson is one of the more popular brands. Easily easily found in stores and online. And what I like using it for my paper crafting projects because it's it's not thirsty. It allows me to get some watercolor effects without a lot of fidgeting. So here is a zig marker. And one of the things about this marker is that it takes really well, this particular brand, and also like a Tombow or other markers, works pretty well on this paper because it stays on the surface. 100% cotton paper or a thirstier paper, it would feel a little more scratchy, and it would be you would have to work with it a little bit more. But look at that color. It disperses very, very well. But I want to show you, I want to pull this up a little bit closer. You can see that it's just kind of sitting on the top. I could lift some of this away pretty easily, and you could see the original lines. So it stains, but this color just kind of sits on the top. And I'm not using a lot of water here. So this is not like a washy paper crafting kind of project. But I'm getting some smooth blends, but everything is just kind of sitting on top of the paper. It's wet, but not super wet. It doesn't really, when working with the cellulose papers, and you can tell because they're always like 140 pound, and they don't say 100% cotton, but they are watercolor paper. These work really well with markers. They work really well with inks. And we talked about inks in the last live. But what I really like about them is that you can have some really fun watercolor projects without all the fussy, without being worried or without some of the fussiness of a thirstier paper. So here's the Karen Brush Marker Pro. I do like this marker. I do like this brand. Super vibrant. These markers have dyes in them. So that's what makes them super, super bright. And you can see I was able to get that color to disperse really quickly. And I'm able to watercolor with it. And even use what's here, kind of spread it out. And I'm able to get from darks to lights pretty quickly. So the paper is thick. It's got a nice cardstock thickness to it. But it's just not as thirsty. Okay, not as thirsty as 100% cotton paper. So I choose this paper to use with paper crafting projects like this card that we're making today when I want watercolor effects without being super fussy about what the darks and the lights are and adding multiple layers upon layers. I can get this effect all in one shot, in one layer, and we're going to do it together. I'm going to show you. Okay, so 100% cotton papers versus cellulose papers. These are the different kind of effects that we can get. Now, I'm on the textured side. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to show you what happens when you watercolor on the smooth side. Basically the same effects, but I just want, there's my left hand coming in. I just want to show you what it looks like. It sits on top of the paper, so this color is sitting on the top of the paper even more so. And you see how I'm able to like easily pull some of it up and away? It's because it's not thirsty and it's not sinking, the color is not sinking into the paper. It's just sitting on top. So you have room to move things, but everything is just sitting on top. Same with the Caron brush marker. Let's pop that in so that you can take a peek at that. Ooh, that went down fast. I also feel like on the smooth side, you've got to work a little bit quicker. So see how I'm able to disperse, get that color to disperse, but it's sitting on top. And watch, I could totally lift it away. And that's, you've got some really nice, beautiful watercolor effects with a non-thirsty paper. What I love about these zigs is I'm going to show you. The water-based mediums often are made up of different dyes inside them. Okay, so different kinds of dyes can give you varying shades of that color. So that's what kind of makes the zigs kind of fun. Zigs have been around a long time. Tombos as well work really well on this paper. The Caron brush markers, because they're liquid and they work really well. They work really well as well. So, fun thing about these kinds of markers is that they also work fantastic with any other kind of watercolor medium you have. If you're using pencils or if you're using any kind of inks, you can mix and mash all of them up to get these really fun effects. Okay, so this is the Canson watercolor paper. There are lots of different brand names, but basically it's a cellulose paper. And that just means, just as a review, that it's a paper, it's paper fibers, pulp, a wood pulp, pulled together and mashed together to make this paper. But again, I love using this for my paper crafting projects for easy going watercolor effects. It's cold pressed, 140 pounds, so it's super, super thick. But just know that it's not a thirsty paper. So it's not something that we're going to throw a ton of water at and add layer after layer after layer. Because if we do, the paper will start to get angry and you might bore a hole through it, which I've done. So, you know, that can happen. Okay. So let's dive in, and we're going to dive right into the pansies and violas. And I'm going to show you how super easy it is to get this kind of no fuss watercoloring going. I'm just digging it. Look at that purple And as it dried and as I blended it out, how the color variations have changed. Digging it. Oh, okay. I'm going to start with the darker zig. What color is this? Violet. So there we go. This color is violet. And we're just going to dive in and just have a little chatty chat along the way. Okay, glasses are going off. Just realized everything was, I do this every time. Everything started to get a little blurry as I'm looking close up because I had my glasses on. Okay, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to start one petal at a time. We don't need a ton of color here. I'm going to show you. I'm just kind of doing a little, I'm applying a little bit of color, one petal at a time, in the center, and then we're going to work our way out. So I'm going to drop this down. I'm going to pick up some water here. I have a wet brush, but it's not sopping wet. And I'm going to use what's here, and I'm just going to start to pull that violet color out from the center to the outer edge. And you'll find we've used very, very little color there, but I'm not applying it. I'm not coloring in the entire pansy petal. I'm just adding, using what I've put, I've kind of flicked it in the center there. And then I'm just going to pull it out to the outer edge. And those little droplets that I've made, I'm leaving them because it adds a little bit of extra texture and dimension as that dries. So now I'm going to move to the next petal. This time I'm going to go opposite because that's kind of drying. It'll dry pretty quickly because I don't have a lot of water there. Now you can't really see the violet, but watch it kind of explode as I add some water. Now this, hi Pam, Pam just joined. So this isn't, these water-based markers are not like a traditional watercolor in that when you drop them into water, they go, poosh, you know, and they kind of spider out. These we have to coax and we have to work a little bit. But what you get in return is a little more control over your watercolor effects and the whole entire project. Thank you, Pam. What a sweet comment. Okay, I'm going to move to this petal right here. And I'm just applying some color and I'm flicking. Just do a little flicks here, a little bit of flicks there. Looks like a hot mess when you're coloring it down, right? But don't freak out. Just keep going. My brush is not super, super wet. You can see how I can really quickly lift that color up and away. And the watercolor, the water-based marker color is giving us that watercolor effects. It's sitting on top of the paper though, because it's cellulose paper. It's not sinking in super deep, but I'm loving that. We're getting variations from light to dark. We're getting really fun texture, and we're just having some fun creating a pansy. Okay, and the beauty of this technique is that it is no fuss. We're using one color. We're getting really pretty watercolor effects pretty quickly, really quickly. I'm going to move this out. Just keep using my brush and just kind of coming out to the edge. And it's a little streaky, but I'm digging it and I'm going to leave it. Okay, it's going to be super fun. All right, I'm going to come in here and do this last petal and have some fun. So when you're using these, resist when you're using your markers. And I'd love to hear from everyone, like if you own Zigs or you've used Tombos or other water-based markers. If you've tried this technique, pop it in the chat. Tell me if you like it. Or did you just coming out today and we're learning something new? when I want to create a card project and I want a really quick watercolor effect, this is what I tend to go to. Using markers, getting the layers done in one pass, right? One pass of watercolor with a marker. Super fun. Now I used the tip of the marker and went right to the paper. So I went direct to paper. But remember, you can always do it this way. You can put a little bit down on your mat and you can lift it up with your brush. But you end up with really a softer blend of color. So, okay. But again, multiple and varied uses for your marker. All right, I'm going to just push her aside a little bit and we're going to concentrate on the two little violas. Cherie says that she's a newbie at this. That's great. You're going to learn something new today. Love that. And Pam has the Karen markers. I do too. I have quite a few. And I find that like I really enjoy when I grab them and it makes me want to grab them and use them more. They're really fun. Okay, I am using another brush marker and I'm using lilac this time. And I'm doing the violas in some lilac to be a nice contrast to the violet pansy. So, all right. Yes, Mary, thank goodness for replays. Yes. Okay, I'm doing the same technique with this one. Except this time I'm going to just quickly go around because this one is a little bit small. This little stamp is a lot smaller. I'm going to quickly go around and apply my color to the inside of, Cheryl uses zigs, Catherine uses zigs. I've had my zigs forever and a day. And I just go back to them all the time. Okay, I'm going to just do the same technique that I did with the pansy. And I'm just taking the color, wetting it from the center, and using what gets picked up on my brush and pulling it out. Now, the reason why I just went ahead and applied that color right away is because this image is a lot smaller and I'm able to work a lot quicker than I was with the pansy. The marker color will dry. You know, it'll dry pretty quickly, but it will reactivate with water. Now, will it reactivate a day or two later? Not so much, right? But Irma has the Arteza watercolor markers too. I have those too. They're fun. They're very much like the zigs, and I really dig those too. I'm loving that soft color. Okay, I'm gonna go in and do the same technique with the other viola, and you can see that I'm not really being super fussy either about staying inside lines, and I'm just getting that color down and applied so that I can blend it out. Just kind of going across the edges a little bit here and blending out that color. My brush is very gentle, like not a lot of water on it, but just enough to activate ink and get it moving. So this watercolor technique, really great starter technique because you can establish a lot of control over your watercolor look. And this is just like a wash of watercolor. And we've got this little baby here. Look at the color. I'm just digging it. We've got that, we started with that violet in the center, and as it moved out, you can see some wet washes, and you've got a really fun watercolor effect, and it was super no fuss, right? No fuss whatsoever. Okay, we're going to put our little pansies and violas over here. They're going to dry. And now we're going to bring in our base. Now, I cut the base of the base layer of this card, again, out of the Canson watercolor paper. I use the Master Layout stitch die. I use it all the time. I'm a little obsessed with it because I love it. It's a really simple layer. Now I'm going to use the Karen brush marker in the gold. I want that yellow look and feel for the cup. Okay, So with this one, I'm just going to work right to left. And again, I'm just flicking in some color, just using this side motion and flicking in color. And I'm going all the way down around the sides of the cup and just flicking. I'm not going all the way over because we don't need to. The right hand side of the cup is going to be darker in color than the left hand side of the cup. And now just getting my brush a little bit wet, and I'm going to come in and I'm just going to start to push that color in the same flicking motion across the cup. Kind of went outside the lines a little bit, but that's okay. Okay. Cherie just asked, how does using ink cubes smooshed on the mat differ? It doesn't. It's another great way to use your ink cubes and create watercolor effects. So you have so many different options to create watercolor effects with products that you probably already have in your stash. Ink cubes are fantastic for that. Markers are fantastic. So if you're just getting started in watercolor and you want to try to get these effects for your paper crafting projects, dig some of the things out that you already have and give it a go and play. But if you did take an ink cube, and Cherie was saying, like, if you took an ink cube and you smooshed it down on your mat there, and you just get some water, you can use that as a watercolor. Super fun. Same thing with the re-inkers. Like, we did re-inkers in our last live together, but you could use the ink pads and do the smooshing. So super simple. I just took that, flicked in some of that gold color, and I just brushed it across and got that whole nice little watercolor effect going with the cup here. Oh, loving it. Loving that color. Okay, we're going to move ahead and we're going to assemble this card, and we're going to stamp out the sentiment right on the cup. I'm going to let that dry a little bit. Look at that. Now, I had a little pool of water right there, and you can see that it pushed back some of that color, and it gave me a lot of extra texture and dimension without height. Love it! I get so excited. Does everybody else get excited when they start to create things and different things start to happen when they're creating your card projects? Maybe you've made an oopsie and something new gets created. It happens to me all the time. I'm using some of this Connect glue. I'm obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with liquid glues. I love them. I like using them for my card projects. I especially love using this liquid glue with watercolor paper because watercolor paper is thick and the liquid glue works really, really well. Okay, Christy just asked me, what is your take on the Inktense water reactive pencils or the crayons? Oh, Christy, I have both. I do love them. I do love Inktense. That's by Derwent. They've been around for a while, and I really do enjoy using them. Now, the thing about Inktense that makes them different from other watercolor mediums is that they are an ink. So when you're using them and you're coloring with them, they are permanent. So you're able to do other things over top of them or re-wet it after it's dried, and it will not move because it's ink. So that's what makes them really super unique. Maybe you've given me an idea. I've got so many ideas today. I might crack them out for our next live tutorial to show you another way to watercolor with a different kind of medium. And Pam's saying she has the Inktense, but she hasn't dabbled in them yet. Get them out. Use them. Play with them. They work exactly like a watercolor pencil. They are maybe more muted and maybe a little less vibrant. But remember, they are an ink. So they will dry and they will be permanent. And it's just a different kind of medium. Super fun. Okay. All right. So I've got my cup down here. and she is dry. Now, sometimes I have created the whole card and then forgot to put the sentiment on, or not given myself enough space for the sentiment. But this time I'm going to get that sentiment in there. Now, the Choose Grace sentiment in the stamp set, I designed it to fit inside of the cup. So it fits perfectly inside the cup. You know, if you stamp it inside the cup without being kind of wild and free, like sometimes I get a little bit wonky. You use, I'm just inking this up with the Obsidian, and I'm just going to go ahead and get that in there. It looks like, yeah, we're going for it. Looks like we're good. And I got it right in there. Look at me. Look at me. I get excited every time I actually stamp a sentiment and it's straight and not wonky, or it's actually in the place that I wanted it to be. So you can see that the C and then that little tail on the Grace kind of fits in there. Now, by putting that sentiment in there, it helps give me the positioning for layering all of my elements. Okay, Catherine just said, I love the encouragement you give us to be free and let the watercolor do its thing. Absolutely. It's so important to get the soft effect and the hard for me, and it's hard for you to do. Getting that soft kind of smoothie blend effect is just something that takes a little bit of practice. And again, just be free. It's just water, color, and paper, right? So we're just having some fun. And really, watercolor just wants to be in flow with the water. It just goes wherever the water is. Just totally goes wherever the water is. And you can get different watercolor effects using different mediums. You don't have to have the latest and greatest. I guarantee you have something in your stash, and we're all paper crafters here. We have inks. You can use inks and do the smoosh and shampoo. You are watercoloring. Okay. We're going to build, let's build the bouquet and just have some fun. Okay, so now that I've got this positioned, I'm going to go ahead in and position in this big honking pansy. And she is going to be right over the C and the E. But before I put her down, I want to take one of the leafery bits. I love this big honking leafery bit from the Wildflowers and Weeds. And I'm going to stamp a little leafery here, and I'm going to stamp a little leafery here. Because I do want some, I'm going to pop some of the layers up, but I also want some of the layers on the actual cardstock. And that just gives us a variety in color, and also gives us that look and feel like there's a lot going on the card, and there's a lot of extra texture without the height. So I'm going to use some Jelly Bean Green. Get a little wild here with the leafery. Just ink up that leafery. Nice and juicy. And I'm going to just kind of position it right there. And it's okay. I know that it's going right there, but look, no worries. See how it's going to get covered up? That's the beauty of this. And I'm eyeballing it a little bit here. I'm going to go up this way. Totally eyeballing. And you should feel free to eyeball. Right? Feel free to have some fun with this. Okay. Let's just go ahead and get that stamp off. So now I've got some positioning. I've got some positions here. It's going to help me put this down. Let's go ahead and get a little bit of foam tape. And I like this foam tape. I like foam tape because you can tear it. I'm going to put a little dot in the center because I want to give myself enough room around the edges so that I can get some other things behind it. So that pansy is now my anchoring point, and I'm going to start to build around her. I've got another little piece. I'm going to take this piece of foam. I'm going to use 2 pieces of foam here. Put one on the back of this viola and one on the back of this pretty viola. And then I'm going to start nesting them in. I'm going to put one right here that just kind of nests around that choose. Her little tiny leaf tail, petal tail is going to go right there. I'm going to nest her right there. So we've got a relationship between the mama and the baby. Oh my goodness, I'm being silly. Okay, and then I'm just going to nest her like right here. So we've got that whole like 3 flower blooms. They're nested together so they have a relationship with each other. And now I'm just going to start to layer some of the other leafery elements in and around. I'm going to start at the top of the pansy. Just put a little tiny bead of glue here. Pop her right here. Just up and out. And I do like it when some of our elements go off the edge of the card stock, of that card base, because it creates a little bit more visual interest. So, ooh, hello. I got quite a bit of glue there. Okay, I'm going to take this one because that leafery is going that way, and I want this leafery to kind of go in. Oops, I just kind of punched her out there. Go in and go this way. And so see how she's hanging off a little bit, and she's kind of coming to visit this viola right here. Love that. And she's also going up and off the edge. So we've got this push going out the top of the pansy's head. Kind of like a fun hat. A little fun hat. Okay. I'm going to take this leafery element. I'm going to pop her in over here, and we're going to get some movement in the card going this way. So we've got whoosh, we've got some whoosh here, and we've got a little whoosh right here. And I promise it's all going to come together. It looks like a little bit of a leafery explosion, but that's all right. Digging it. Totally digging it. Okay. I'm going to take a little, oh, I don't want foam. Sorry about that. I grabbed a piece of foam. I want to take a little more glue. Yippee-doo, glue, glue. And I'm going to pop her right underneath here. And again, we've got some leafery going this way, that way, kind of like a, you know, when a florist is building a bouquet, there's whoosh, there's things kind of going up and out and around, and we've got all this movement going on. Now, we've got all this beautiful leafery and greenery. And we I love the sound effects. I can't help myself, Cherie. Everything is a sound effect. We've got all this leafery and greenery. And we've got this yellow vase that kind of grounds things a little bit and also is a nice companion color to the jelly bean green. But I want to go in. I've got this stamp right here, which looks like a little bit of lavender. Little bit of lavender buds. And that's from the Choose Grace stamp set. But also in Wildflowers and Weeds, I've got lavender buds in there too. Super fun. I'm going to come in with a little bit of wild wisteria. And I'm going to stamp this down, and it creates a little accent color. Got a little tiny bit of lavender kind of popping out from the bottom here. And then I'm going to pop a little bit up right here at the top. And what that does is it just adds a little bit of this violet color to this base, helps ground the whole design, and we've got a lot more movement going on. I'm just digging this. I'm digging the way this is coming out. Look at the watercolor effects that we've got going with just one pass on those zig markers. Now we're just going to come in and finish it off just a little bit with these cute little hearts. These are little heart embellishments from the Gina K line. I'm going to grab my little poker thingy, this little jewel picker from Marvi Uchida. And I'm going to take my hearts and pop them into the center of these flowers. Ooh, look at that big gloop. Let's get a little gloop, and a little gloop of glue. I'm going to take this one that's a little bit orangey. I'm going to pop it in here. And then I'm going to take the other two yellows and pop them in the center of the other violas. And just kind of let them do their thing. And then we've got this really beautiful floral arrangement card. I am just digging it. I hope you got a lot out of that really simple technique with watercolor, with using water-based markers, using zig. Irma just asked a quick question. Did you stamp the flowers on the smooth or texture side of the watercolor paper? Good question, Irma. We stamped them on the textured side. You could stamp them on the smooth side. Just remember that the smooth side gives you a little bit of a different, a much more smooth effect with your watercolor. If you watercolored on the texture side, you get the added benefit of the textured paper in your paper crafting project, and it just adds a little bit more to the overall look. So Cheryl just said, I love your style. I always come away thinking I can do this. Yes, absolutely. Yes, I'm going to come back on camera. I hope that I really hope that these live tutorials or any of the tutorials on my YouTube channel do just that for you. They give you that little boost of confidence that says, yeah, I can do this. I hope that my style just kind of simplifies things. I always say demystifies the technique and really simplifies it for you in the context of creating with your, our paper crafting projects. I'm really thankful that you're sharing that with me, and that is what is happening here, because that's the whole goal. I tend to be maybe a little bit of a different teacher. I get really super nerdy when it comes to the technique, because I want to be able to say to you, grab this pen, grab this marker, and I'm going to show you every single possible thing that you can do to create a watercolor effect with just this one marker, right? So that you get more bang for your buck. We're all investing in our art supplies and our paper crafting supplies, and we really just want new ideas to create with them. So super fun. So we made the card. We got like 2 minutes to spare. Made the card in an hour. Went through some watercolor techniques with water-based markers. Talked about the cellulose Canson watercolor paper, and how to use it and what makes it different from the 100% cotton watercolor papers that I'm usually talking about. So I'm so grateful that you could all join me today. Every time I do a live, I get a little more excited, and I get, I'm just so much gratitude for you taking the time out today to be with me during lunch and creating something and allowing me in your space to be able to share with you and help you craft your joy. I hope that this inspiration sends you into the weekend inspired. I hope wherever you are that you get a little more sun, because it's been a little bit of a challenging spring getting going. And if you're at all interested in hearing more from me and you want to get on my email list, there's a link down below to subscribe to my email list. I send an email out usually once a week, and it's usually chock full of the tutorials, also freebies or specials to my online classroom or my shop, and just giving you kind of an update. I also share updates of when the new Gina K releases are happening, and it's just a great way for me to touch point with you, because I'm not always sure that everything gets seen in social media. I do post in social media, so I hope you'll follow me there. But if you'd like to get on my subscriber list, the link is down below in the description. And I also, when you subscribe, you get a free art print download from me. So thanks to everyone for coming today. Denise just shared, I always learn from you. That is my greatest joy, that I could come to you and you can always learn something new that gives you a little inspiration. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'm really excited. I'm probably going to be coming back next week. And I think we're going to do the ink tents because I was just kind of getting inspired by ink tents last week, and that could be super fun. I also have a brand new watercolor class. I'm still working on it. I know I've been saying it over and over and over again, called Watercolor Wonderland, and it is an A to Z watercolor class. It's a big one. It's coming. I'm shooting for May 24th for it to be coming out. It is my great joy that I am working on. Um, and I'll be sharing more about that later as well. So, if you're new here, take a look at some of the other tutorials on this channel. I have so many things I've shared. I'm really enjoying doing the lives with everyone and being able to come and talk with you and really get into a technique, a very specific technique during our live. So I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I hope you carve out a little bit of time to craft your joy, and I'll see you soon. Thanks so much.